Hello, this is Alex Glasgow speaking, and today I'm talking to my colleague David Ormsby about some aspects of turfgrass nutrition. We're going to do a series of these. By way of introduction, in my opinion, turfgrass nutrition is actually very simple in comparison to other situations. For example, in intensive pastoral production such as dairy farming, in that case, you want to grow lots of grass, but there are some very real animal health issues related to fertilizer practices that can be catastrophic. Or in horticulture, say fruit crops, you have to manipulate fertility through different crop phases, such as initiating flowering, fruit set, then fruit development, and finally maturity. In turf, we're dealing with a vegetative plant only. In most cases, we don't remove any crop, so we don't deplete nutrients that way. And more often than not, we don't need to maximize production. However, the plants are pushed pretty hard in some situations, like on golf greens. So let's talk about turf nutrition. Dave, in turf, it's pretty much always about nitrogen. Can you explain why that is?
Nitrogen is the nutrient we know plants need in the greatest quantities. It's the most mobile nutrient. And as a turf advisor that's been working in this industry for many years, it's always nitrogen that's deficient when we visit turf facilities.
Thanks for that. Okay. What about the other macronutrients? In turf, we focus on phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. How much of these do turf plants actually need?
These macronutrients are important, but they're required in significantly less volumes than nitrogen.
Okay, can you talk about the ability of turf root zones to provide them?
So the first thing I think we underestimate as turf managers is that the organic matter in our profiles is a major supplier of nutrients. And probably the best example of this is, think of an area that you never feed or mow, and you will see the grass grows very happily, and it's coming from the organic matter. So in terms of things like our macronutrients, we know that in most cases the organic matter can supply the majority of these.
What about clipping, return, or removal? How does that influence this?
Well, clipping return means that effectively we aren't mining the fertilizer or nutrient values in our soil. So the clippings return, they decompose and they release the nutrients for reuse. If we remove the clippings, then we're taking away nutrients, and we may have to apply additional nutrients to replace those being lost.
So thinking about macronutrients, how often do you see growth responses to applications of them? And this is macronutrients other than nitrogen.
Right, the one macronutrient that will almost always give us a growth response is magnesium. It generally doesn't create more mowing or extra grass length, but it inevitably causes the grass to green up. In the case of the other macronutrients, I've really never seen an obvious response to applying those nutrients, whereas if I put nitrogen on, we can almost always guarantee extra greenness and lots more growth.
So conversely, have you seen real and proven deficiencies of these macronutrients?
Well, firstly, let's think about nitrogen. Nitrogen, I see deficiencies all the time. In terms of the other macronutrients, in all fairness, in 30 odd years of doing this job, you can probably count those deficiencies on one hand.
So you don't see that very often at all. What about sulfur? It's important in agriculture, but we never consider it in turf, really.
Right, so sulfur is very important in clover production. So it's one of the reasons it's talked about a lot, particularly in the agricultural sector. In terms of turf, because we use a lot, or generally solely based sulfate fertilizers, we actually apply a lot of sulfates. And when you look at soil test results, generally the sulfur levels will test out as being extremely high in most cases.
Finally, what about trace elements?
Look, you can tell a story about these things. The reality is that trace element deficiencies, again, I've probably seen one, maybe two in my working career. The time when such deficiencies are likely to occur are when you're dealing with high pHs, in which case you may see deficiencies of iron, possibly manganese.
So once again, it's a situation where the turf root zones are pretty much able to provide the plant requirements for them, and hence you don't see these deficiencies. So great. Thanks for that, Dave. We're going to wrap it up there, and thanks for listening.